before we get into today's episode, I do want to ask, what kind of content do you guys crave the most? Free agency, draft? Let me know in the comment section if it's draft. Hit the thumbs up button if it's free agency. And if you love both, then we'll do both. Comment D and like the video. Now let's talk about what I want to talk about today, and that is Khalil Mack, because I woke up this morning to a bunch of notifications about Khalil Mack, and I'll be honest, when I saw the number of notifications waiting for me on my phone, I thought it was he retired. I didn't think Khalil Mack at this stage in his career was a breaking news, I'm not going to retire type of player. So clearly Mack's agent is doing a lot of work on the phones right now. But I do think this is a free agent target and potential signing for Atlanta. They desperately need some help at pass rush. And look at Mack's last 4 years. There's one outlier. It's the 2023 season with 17 sacks and 5 forced fumbles, which is not too far removed from present day. So the Falcons feel like even if we just get 75% of that production, it's going to be the best pass rusher we've had since Vic Beasley almost a decade ago. But at this point in his career, I think Mack is just a pure pass rush specialist. He played the fewest percentage of snaps in his entire career, I believe, this past season, playing about 65-ish% of snaps. So to me, that says he's not someone who goes out there on 1st and 10 to stop the run. He's out there for obvious passing situations, 2nd and 3rd down. And to be honest with you, that's perfectly fine with me. Now, if you're going to give him a boatload of cash, then the expectations are you play 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down, and every once in a while you get a breather, and that equates to about 80% of snaps. And that's what he was playing for much of his career between the Raiders, the Bears, and earlier on with the Chargers. But now that he's approaching 34 years old, if he can only give me a couple of good snaps on 3rd down, fine. This Falcons team, I think, is willing to pay a little bit more for a pass rush specialist because they need a pass rush specialist. I'm looking at their front 5. Judon's going to be a free agent, as will James Smith-Williams, and I don't really care for either of those players to come back next year anyway. Lorenzo Carter's going to be a free agent. I mean, look at the true pass rush specialists, if you will, on the roster for 2025. I really only see one, Arnold Ebiketie, who played less than half the snaps this past season. If you're wondering what Raheem Morris thinks of 17, he thinks he is good for every other play. He had 6 sacks in the last 6 weeks of the season, so he ended the year on a high note. But if you are a pass rush specialist, that means you can win your one-on-one matchup. And I don't think Arnold has shown us through 3 seasons he's capable of doing that. And not even us, this coaching staff. I don't think they really have a lot of faith in him playing all 3 downs. And the lack of snaps this past season reflects that. It's not like he couldn't break through a glass ceiling because there were so many talented pass rushers above him. No one could even touch the quarterback for the first 10 weeks of the season, and 17 was sitting on the bench for a majority of the game. So I think his lack of snaps should be noted as this is not someone who the Atlanta Falcons believe, hey, with Judon and James Smith-Williams going to free agency, we feel confident in bringing him up and putting him into a larger role. There's been that opportunity time and time again since he got to Atlanta. Unfortunately, he just has not gone out there and seized it. So with all this being said, the edge rusher spot in my eyes is a position you double dip. You go sign Khalil Mack for a 1-year, $8 million contract, kind of like Justin Simmons. You're probably not going to get elite production. You might only get 6 sacks. And you know what? That's fine. I'm willing to exchange $8 million, by my money, Arthur Blank's money, $8 million for 6 sacks. I don't think you then expect him to be your starting outside linebacker, someone who's going to play all 3 downs. If that's the expectation, then you are signing yourself up for disaster because you're going to burn Mack out on 1st down run plays, and he's not going to have a full tank of gas on 3rd down to get after the quarterback. But bring in Khalil Mack for 3rd and long, for goal line or, 3rd and goal from the 5 where you're going to pass it. You want to get them out of field goal range. Like, that is his role in 2025 for whichever team signs him. And I would like for the Falcons to be that team because more is more with them at this point. So speaking of double dipping, go to free agency, sign Khalil Mack, then look to the draft in April and bring on another edge rusher. I feel like the Falcons cannot do enough at this position, which I have said for so many off seasons in a row now. But there are a couple of noteworthy free agents at this position. But overall, it's not a very sexy group of free agents for pass rushers. So this is not a great offseason to need an edge. But here's a hot take, and this is surprising coming from me. There's no one there worth overpaying. What I mean by that is the nature of free agency is you overpay. Like, take Darnell Mooney, for example. Atlanta gave him $39 million. Did he look like a $39 million man his last year in Chicago? No, of course not. He had like 400 yards. But if you want to get him over some other teams, you get into a little bit of a bidding war. And it's okay if you give someone probably a little bit more than what they're worth, if that means you still get really good play out of it, right? You're probably not going to get what you'd expect for $39 million. Maybe it looks like an absolute steal looking back at it, which right now it's kind of trending that way. But by and large, in free agency, you likely overpay a little bit for what they're worth and what they're getting. And I don't think there's anyone in this free agency pool that is so good that it's okay if you overpay them a little bit and they don't quite live up to the contract, but they still do a pretty good job. I think we're looking at a couple of Dante Fowlers, just a blast from the past for the Falcons right there. So if Atlanta ends up being the team that pays the most money for a pass rusher, if it's that bunch right there, I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth. I'm not going to be stoked about it because I don't think it's that great of a crop. Josh Sweat is probably the best of the bunch, but he has I think 1 season with 10 or more sacks, and he's been in the league for 7-8 years-ish now with the Eagles. Chase Young, I have too many concerns with him off the field, and he's going to be a leader in this defense? I don't think so. Haason Reddick I do like, but I don't think you're about to give Reddick a 3 to 4 year contract when he's 30 years old. Azeez Ojulari, if he ends up commanding like $15 million a season, I doubt he's here past year number 2. So at that point, if there's no one really worth overpaying, like if there's no one that's so great, like for example, last offseason, one of the best free agents at defense was Christian Wilkins. And I think it's okay to overpay for Christian Wilkins a little bit because even if you don't get the full value of what you gave him and you only get 90% of it, you're still going to be happy with what you invested. I don't think there's anyone like that in this free agency class. So, with that being said, I want to look at the draft next. I want to look at a different name that we have not talked about on today's show, or not today's show, but just any show here at Falcons Today. But first, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Factor. Ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They are dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared for any active, busy lifestyle. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/FalconsChat50off and use code FalconsChat50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. It's an awesome way to get into a healthier lifestyle by still having some really nice meals like you can see on screen. That's code FalconsChat50off at factormeals.com/FalconsChat50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All that information is in the comments and description of today's video. So to kind of put a bow on the free agent class for the edge rushers, I'm more interested in players like these guys here, meaning I don't think that there is someone in this class worthy of a ginormous contract that inevitably someone is going to give, and I don't want the Falcons to be the donkey. What about Baron Browning? What about Derek Barnett or Malcolm Koonce? Browning recently made the transition from being an inside linebacker to an outside linebacker. When he's been healthy, he has shown some promise. Now, the issue is he's missed too many games, but if you can get him clean bill of health going into 2025, that could be a really good value bargain signing. Derek Barnett, former first-round pick out of Tennessee to the Eagles, came up with a huge play in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. He was a little disappointing towards the end of his time in Philly, but he's played really well under DeMeco Ryans, and I wonder if he can continue playing well under Raheem Morris. Malcolm Koonce, he missed all of 2024 because of a torn ACL in the preseason, but 2023, 8 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. I think some teams might overlook him a little bit because of that injury, but I don't think the Falcons should be overlooking him. My suspicion is the Falcons are not going to go out there and make a monster contract signing. So if we're looking for gems, those are 3 gems right there that I've got my eyes on. But let me know who you want Atlanta to sign down below in the comment section. Now, talking about double dipping, let's talk about the second half of the dip, right? It's the draft. So here are Mel Kiper's top 5 defensive ends. I'm not saying that this is the word of God, but it just kind of gives you a couple of names to go off of. I'm not a big fan of any of these players. Like, that's a bit harsh. Shamar Stewart, the number 1 guy on his list. Let's talk about it for a second. 3 straight seasons with 1.5 sacks. He's got incredible athletic traits. He was a big-time recruit going to A&M, but I am looking for proven production. Why am I to believe that when he gets to the NFL, all of a sudden he'll wake up and learn how to sack the quarterback with his God-given natural abilities of being 6'5", 290 pounds, but moving like a jaguar? There are plenty of great examples of track stars in college football not working out in the NFL. So I'm crossing him off. Nick Scorton started at Purdue, transferred to A&M, had a better 2023 season than 2024. That's not like too big of a red flag to me, but that's something worth looking into a little bit. Landon Jackson, I think he's actually going to make a pretty nice player. I don't think he's ever going to be a perennial Pro Bowler, but he's probably going to be one of those fan favorites that hops around a little bit. JT was a huge recruit to the Buckeyes. He ended up playing, I think, all 4 years for Ohio State. A little bit underwhelming from a recruiting standpoint, but he played super good down the stretch for Ohio State en route to their championship run. Now, as for his outside linebacker rankings, let's take a look at those from Mel Kiper. So, you've got Abdul Carter from Penn State. He's not falling to 15. Michael Williams from Georgia. He could be there 15. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Then he's got Mike Green from Marshall. Who? That's what I want to talk about next. James Pierce out of Tennessee could very well be there 15 as well. But I want to take a closer look at Green because he has been a name that I've seen in the comment section a couple of times, but we haven't really given him much airtime. So let's get to know the guy who led college football in sacks with 17 this season. Don't you think he'd be like the obvious starting point for finding your next great pass rusher? Who led the country in sacks last year? It's the guy from Marshall in West Virginia. Now, he started at Virginia, then he transferred to Marshall, where he played 2 seasons, 2023 and 2024. He was top 10 this past season in sacks, first, tackles for loss, second, pass rush win rate, which is ESPN's own weird metric where when you see those numbers, by the way, I wouldn't take them with a grain of salt, but like what's a step above that? Pass rush win rate is not like some guy in a basement who just watches all the tape and he goes, okay, who won this rep? It's not like, what was that show we used to watch? Deadliest Warrior. You remember the show Deadliest Warrior? Would have like a green beret and then like a night fight to figure out who would win in a battle. That's not what pass rush win rate is. They have little trackers, little chips in the shoulder pads. And what they are doing is they are seeing if the defensive player's shoulder pads beats the offensive tackle's shoulder pads to the quarterback. It's not a perfect science. It spits out a percentage, and then people look at it as like, oh, that's a proven fact right there. It's not that simple. So I would just find some middle ground between a grain of salt and it's the word of God. But he did finish 9th with all that being said in pass rush win rate. Now, last year for the Thundering Herd, 84 tackles. For a pass rusher, like those are middle linebacker numbers. That means this guy has a relentless motor and effort, kind of reminiscent of like Max Crosby, someone who never misses a snap, someone who's going to be running down ball carriers 30 yards down the field, 23 tackles for loss, 17 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. If you want someone who's going to go all out every single snap and not take first down off so they kind of save themselves for third down a little bit, Mike Green is your guy. So if you like the Mike Green conversation, I can do a bigger deep dive on him because people are going to be concerned about drafting someone who went to Marshall, who had 17 sacks going up against future accountants and plumbers and State Farm agents of offensive tackles. Like, are they really going to, is he really going to translate to the NFL when he's playing real offensive tackles? We can do a deeper dive on this name if you guys would like. Just let me know in the comment section. But overall, I'm definitely interested in Mike Green. So we got to do a little bit more digging to figure out whether or not this is a good fit for the Falcons at 15. I'm not going to write him off because he went to Marshall. There are good and bad examples of finding players in round one who did not go to traditional Power 4, Power 5 schools. Take like Quinyon Mitchell for a quick example here. If you were watching the Eagles-Rams game, fortunately he left early with an injury, but he's been one of the best defenders in football this year. He's a rookie corner who went to Toledo. So you can find good players outside of the SEC, the Big Ten, all that stuff. Before we sign off, as always, we're going to spin a wheel. I picked 6 recent subscribers to the channel, so make sure you subscribe and you could be a part of the next wheel spin. But here we go. Let's spin that wheel. Who's it going to be? We are sitting on the edge of our seat, and it is Jordan Christopher.
Let's
Jordan,
go.
welcome aboard. Thank you for subscribing. 2 claps for Jordan, everyone. 1, 2. I'll see you guys later. Oh, we weren't.